Oh yes, the meeting's being recorded. There you are. That's item number one. So I've just got an introductory spiel. So I'd like to welcome everyone. So thank you very much. This Parish Liaison Committee. Many of you know who I am, but I'm Councillor Andy Furs, currently the chair of Bath and North East Somerset. I'd like to remind members and officers to keep the background noise to a minimum, please. Please stay muted for as long as you can. And when I call people forward to speak, I generally try to give you a bit of a heads up as to the next speaker, but one. There is a chat facility. For those who are familiar, there's a chat facility which I ask people to use and place "May I speak," and either Marie or Alison will sort of manage that as we go through to make sure I don't miss anyone as the speakers as normal. And also, as we just found out, the meeting is being recorded on YouTube, so just be aware, everyone, please. And I'd like to remind everyone, I'm sure Aurora, who's there, in the election period. This is quite important. We're in what they call PERDA, and for both the Police and Crime Commissioner elections and the WECA mayoral elections, both taking place at the same time in May. Therefore, I'm sure that you'll be aware that we'd like to make sure we don't discuss anything political that affects those two areas of their responsibilities, basically WECA transport issues in a political sense, or the Police and Crime Commissioner. So I think that picks that up. I can see Aurora there. Do I get a nod from Aurora? Is that good enough? That's good enough. Thank you very much, Aurora. Right, so apologies for absence. So Marie, could you just give us a heads up, please?
Yep, thank you, Chair. I have apologies from Councillor Richard Samuel, the Clerk to Shoscombe Parish Council and Charkham Parish Council.
That's great. Thank you very much. And is Dina there? Because I believe Dina was going to be late. Is Dina there?
Oh, I'm not going to be late, but I am going to leave early.
Oh, sorry, you're leaving early. Okay, well, we've got you on soon, so that's great. Thank you very much. So item 3 on the agenda, trying to get through this, urgent business. I've not been advised of any urgent business for tonight, so I think we can move on. Marie, is that okay?
Yeah, there's no urgent business, Chair.
Thank you very much. So item 4, Cabinet and Senior Officer update. So this is normally the slot for all of you that are familiar that we get the Cabinet to update us. What I've asked is both Councillor Butters, Councillor Wright on transport, and Councillor Ball on planning to come a bit later on item 6, and we'll hear from Councillor Sarah Warren on her piece after this. So it speeds things along and then they can present there. So Councillor Samuel's not here, so I presume Dina, Councillor Romero, you'll present anything that Councillor Samuel has. So over to you, please.
Thank you. I'm happy to give a very, very brief update on the pandemic for everybody, and then I'll go into the various items that I've been asked to give feedback on, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah, and just and if I can, sorry, Dina, sorry, and what I should have said is regarding the item on council meetings themselves.
Yes.
I know that the ALCA session a bit later on wants to raise that, so any details we might want to pick up a bit later, but you might just give us an overview to start with.
Lovely. Right. So if I make a very, as I said, just a very quick overview on the situation in terms of the pandemic for Bath and North East Somerset, and I think this is pretty much, most of you will be of these facts. So we are currently around about 20 cases for per 100,000 on our population. The majority of our top priority groups have already received their vaccinations, and that programme is going really well across the area. There's very little in the way of what they're calling vaccine hesitancy, and so by and large that is proving to be very, very successful. We also have testing centres, and this is for both symptomatic testing, got symptoms, and also asymptomatic testing as well. And so, as I said, that's spread across the area. Keynsham, I think Midsummer Norton and Bath are where those centres are all located. And then I just have one more, and this is more of a request to all those in parishes, if they could remind, if they know of anybody, any EU nationals who are unaware that they need to have their status settled, they need to apply for settled status before the date, unfortunately, has slipped my mind, but it's coming up quite soon, and they need to apply for that status to be resolved, and that all the details are on the council's website. So that was just my very quick, swift update of things that may be of importance or interest to this particular group. So then the items that I was asked to report back on, one which was around the proposed move back to physical meetings in May. This is because the legislation, legislation was put in by government that allowed virtual meetings to have exactly the same status in terms of legality as physical meetings. Now this legislation runs out on at the end of May the 6th, and parishes, I know, like the council, have some concerns about what happens after that, when, you know, people will still be at risk of catching COVID, and many will be, you know, and rightly so, worried about putting themselves at risk, but also worried about being able to represent those that they've been elected to serve. And so, as I said, we too are concerned about this. And, you know, I understand that government have not yet taken action to continue to hold virtual meetings. And there has been widespread lobbying from across the country, including from us in this council. We have written to the Minister to outline the many benefits that have come about from the ability to hold virtual meetings. And we are considering a motion tomorrow at full council to reiterate the cross-party support for this. So in the longer term, we really want to continue to have this provision available if needed. And I stress it's not to force everybody into a virtual meeting, but it's to give that option if it is needed and feels appropriate to do so, because and I said there's a wide range of reasons why we want to do so, not least that it enables people who might otherwise have difficulties in accessing meetings, for either physical reasons or, perhaps for caring responsibilities, or, a wide range of other reasons. And so we are investigating the options for hybrid meetings. So some of us might be in the room and some of us might not be, and that would apply also to off. So it's just to really reassure that we're on your side and we're doing what we can to try and persuade government to bring forward this legislation, and make it so that we can all have that option to have a virtual hybrid meeting if we wish to. So should I pause in case there was any questions on that, Andy?
No, I think on that one we'll discuss that one when under the ALCA heading on item 5. I think we've got a particular one. So if you move on to the next item, please. Okay.
Can I then ask if there's anything particular that comes out of that discussion? Could you then send that to me in case it might want to bring it in to the debate tomorrow?
Sorry, yes, of course, because you won't be here. Yes, we'll do that as a went. Yeah, we'll make sure we pick that up. There's enough cabinet members here to make sure that those issues are picked up, and we've got officers and Marie minuting anyway. So anything particular can be minuted on that when we get to that item. Okay, we carry on, Dina, please.
Lovely. Thank you. Okay, so the second item that we were asked about was the protocol for marking the death of a senior national figure or local holder of higher office. So can I read to you what I've been sent, as because obviously this has been updated in light of the COVID legislation.
Yeah, has that not been circulated?
Okay, so
has
what
it,
I have before me is an updated statement.
okay, has it not been
Well,
circulated?
I wasn't sure, and I'm happy to read it.
Marie, has that been circulated?
No, that hasn't, but we'll.
No,
keep
okay,
I've got the
okay, Dina.
briefing note.
Yeah, give us a précis of that, please, Dina.
Okay, so I'll give you a précis of it. And so, as I said, so these are revised arrangements and they're in place for the COVID pandemic and for the whole of 2021. Okay, and basically what is being stressed here is not to gather, so no mass gatherings, and there will be no sort of physical books of condolence, and there will be no processions or funeral processions or any event in that way, but we will obviously lower the flag according to the protocols that are in place. There will be designated sites for floral tributes, and these are Parade Gardens, the Hollies in Midsummer Norton, and Keynsham Memorial Park. So that's pretty much a summary of what that protocol says, but for the benefit of everybody here, that will then be circulated, so you'll have it in full. Let's hope there isn't any deaths.
Okay, so any comments on that? I know that you haven't seen it, but basically it's saying the normal protocols would have a gathering, procession, etc. All of that has been taken out. No books of condolence during this period of COVID, like Dina says, but there will be these places that floral tributes can be gathered. So if someone of a national figure popped off, then we would, and I'm sure there'd be big press releases about how that would actually function and how it would work at the time. Okay, so
yeah,
Dawn,
so we
Councillor Dawn,
do that.
Councillor Dawn Jury, please.
Yeah, can I just ask, there's quite a few people, including myself, that had quite a reaction to the first vaccination, knocking us out for 4 days. And I have heard quite a few people saying that they're not going to go for their second one. Will Baines be doing anything to encourage people to take their second vaccination?
Yes.
Yeah, well, the answer is yes, I think, Dawn, but that's a very interesting point. And is Councillor Appleyard here?
I don't know if Rob was coming to this or not. He wasn't.
No, he wasn't. Oh, here he is.
Yeah. Hi.
Rob, did you hear that statement? Hear that comment?
It's about the hesitancy on the second
Yes.
jab.
Yes. Yeah.
I've not heard that there's an issue, but obviously there was obviously a lot of chatter about the vaccination, but it's also been reaffirmed by all the principal agencies that there's extremely high confidence in the vaccination. So there should be no reason. And we will obviously do what we need to do to satisfy people's concerns.
Okay, Rob, thank you. Thanks for that, Dawn. I think that was an important comment to make. So, Rob, take that back to the powers that be on the health side, and just so we can head off any hesitancy in that second jab.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Dina, so, I don't have any more on that. So can we move to the next subject, please, Dina, that's on your list?
Yeah, so the next subject actually was the update on the Community Contribution Fund. And so I've got a note here. I don't know if this has been circulated, but this is the note from Richard. So I can again just give you the headlines from it and then circulate it after if it hasn't already been sent out.
Yes, please. I don't think it's been sent, has it, Marie? No, it hasn't. So please give us the headlines.
Okay, because I think there was some confusion about the Community Contribution Fund and the Ward Councillor Empowerment Fund. They are completely separate and different types of funding. So the Ward Councillor Empowerment Fund is it's a sum of money that for 2021 and 2022, sorry, covering that period, there will be £1,000 per councillor, and this is for work so contributions to work on various projects that might benefit from this support. And obviously that can range from, in a quite wide, has quite wide scope. And I think many areas represented by the parishes have benefited from that. And it can be everything, as you know, from giving some funding to us, I think, help set up a community shop, to for park benches, and as I said, there's a massively wide range of different projects that can be applied to. But the more important question was about what the Community Contribution Fund is, and that is a pilot scheme which offers the chance of residents to pay into good causes to help fund local charity, community or voluntary groups. And it's so a letter went out with your council tax bill, and if you or your residents want to make a contribution, they can make a voluntary contribution to the fund. There's also a page on the council's website as well, which gives you more information about that. And you pay for it entirely separately from the council tax, so it won't accidentally fall into the council tax pot. And you can pay once, you can pay more than once, you can pay just £5, or you can pay as much money as you wish to, but it is voluntary. So there's no onus on anybody to make a contribution. It's entirely, as I said, voluntary. And the scheme will be administered by the council, but the funds do not supplement council services, and every penny would be used to fund local projects. So there's a lot of things that aren't known about this because it is a pilot scheme, and we have to see how it sort of works out in reality. And then by the end of the year, we'll be able to sort of make some sort of judgment on whether or not it's been whether or not this is the right shape for such a scheme, and then we'll make some decisions about whether to continue as it is, to make some changes to it, or to not do it in future years. So it's been running for just a little while, and as of Friday, nearly £13,000 had been generated. So yeah, so it seems to be being quite well received. And as I said, that is money that comes from individuals paying into a fund, and as it is very different to the Ward Empowerment Fund, which comes out of funds that are that come from what's called community infrastructure levy, so funds that developers predominantly pay into.
Yeah, thank you, Dina. I've got no specific questions on this, but I'd just like to add myself that the discussions I've been party to have emphasised the need to make sure that the money is sort of evenly spread across the whole of Bath and North East Somerset, and it says here in the briefing note when you see it that the people who will be able to apply for the funds are any charity, voluntary or community organisation that supports residents of Bath and North East Somerset. But priority will be given to projects that benefit the whole district. So it's quite clear that it's a community-wide sort of benefit scheme, and we'll see how it goes. Really, as Dina says, it's a pilot year for it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And I think I would welcome comment as well from parishes, as this scheme goes on throughout the year.
Okay, I've got a comment here. Where can one monitor the amounts raised? So, is there a particular place now? As Dina says, there are contributions up to about £13,000 at the moment. There have been a couple of donations in the £500 mark, which has been very encouraging. So, where will we see that total being monitored, Dina?
I don't know if there's a, one of those old-fashioned thermometer things. I will find out for you and come back. I don't know the
Okay,
detail.
that'd be
of that, I'm
appreciated.
afraid.
I think that answers that question. Okay, so that's the Community Contribution Fund. And okay, so I'd like to move on if I can. It's quite a busy agenda tonight. Before I move on, I've been reminded that I've missed something. I didn't ask for the approval of the minutes. So I failed my first hurdle tonight. So the minutes of the previous meeting, can we ask for approval for that, please, of those there? Yes, any, yeah, I've got lots of people nodding and approval. Any objections really, or any comments that any factual inaccuracies? I'll give anyone a chance to raise that now on the minutes, please. Okay, I'll move on. Thank you for that. So the minutes are duly approved. Marie, thank you for reminding me. Next item on the agenda, I've got an update from Councillor Sarah Warren on the climate emergency, please. Is Sarah there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. In terms of what we have been doing, we've been working hard over the last couple of years to embed solutions to the climate emergency into council's day-to-day business. So the sort of developments we've brought forward, well, as part of the budget, we allocated funds to support work towards several renewable energy schemes, including energy capture at the Roman baths and retrofit of the council's own plant and equipment. We're funding the highest standards of energy efficiency at the new Two Rivers Primary School. We brought forward a Livable Neighborhoods policy before Christmas, and we're hoping that we've had applications in, and we're hoping that we'll get some livable neighborhoods live in the next year or so. We've got the residents parking permit scheme based on vehicle emissions, and of course, you'll all be aware of the clean air zone that went live in Bath last week, which is aimed at reducing nitrogen dioxide emissions in the city centre by supporting residents to upgrade, not just residents, drivers of the most polluting vans and taxis and buses and HGVs to upgrade their vehicles. So if you know of people who've got non-compliant vehicles, they should get in touch with the council. We can upgrade, we have £4,500 for each van available as grants, and we have interest-free finance on top. And if people are going to have trouble repaying their loans, then there can be exemptions if people are in difficulty, if businesses are in difficulty due to COVID. And in order to qualify for this, so it doesn't have to be residents of Bath, you can live elsewhere, provided that your vehicle enters the clean air zone twice or more per week, you will be eligible. So that's something to be aware of. So what else have we got? We've got the Green Affordable Warmth Grant, which is for improving the energy efficiency of homes. So the council has won some funding to boost the grants that the local authority can offer. It's administered through the Energy at Home website. So that's the Bath and North East Somerset Energy at Home website. That particular webpage has got lots of information on both the sorts of schemes you can take on your home to improve its energy efficiency and the sources of funding. And this particular additional funding we've received is for homeowners on lower incomes and with particularly poor energy performance certificate ratings. Parishes, it says, please help us to get this funding to those who are eligible. So if you know of people who might benefit, do point them in the direction of that website. We've got a grant for council care home energy upgrade. So as well as grants for residents, the council has also won some funding from government through the Public Sector Decarbonisation Fund to do a major energy efficiency retrofit of Charlton Court Care Home, which we own and run, and also some funding to help Cleveland Pools project in Bath install low carbon technology. So another item from Bath and West Community Energy is that they've got a call out for medium to large roofs. So if you know of any sort of industrial roofs or businesses or schools or community buildings with south facing roofs, that are larger than a tennis court. Bath and West Community Energy want to hear from you because it may be suitable for solar. And so this is a community fund. It says there's no cost to the solar panels. You buy the energy from the panels at 10% lower cost than through your energy provider. And the community fund then puts money back into the local community for schemes and things. Another item I've been asked to tell you about is the Great British Spring Clean, which will take place between May the 28th and June the 13th. The council is supporting this year's Great British Spring Clean run by the environmental charity Keep Britain Tidy, the country's biggest mass action environmental campaign, which brings people together to clear up the litter that blights 1 million miles of UK streets, coastline, parks, footpaths and neighbourhoods. Baines residents, parishes and community groups are being invited to take part. So the council has equipment to borrow to keep you all safe while you're doing it. So do just get in touch. There's an email address, which is cleanup_events@bathnest.gov.uk. And then, as you'll remember, on our climate emergency website, we've got a particular resource for parishes about things you can do to help your parish move towards net zero. And we have a list of parishes who've declared a climate emergency, but we suspect it's a bit out of date. So Michaela from the sustainability team will be contacting parishes, I think, in the next weeks to find out whether you've declared a climate emergency, or do let us know so we can update our website. That's everything for now, but I'm happy to take questions if you've got time, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. There was a briefing note. I don't know whether that will be circulated as well for information. I'm looking at Marie. Will that be circulated?
I can circulate it, or I'll incorporate it into the minutes themselves.
Yes, that's but whatever works for you, really. But yeah, so all those items. So any questions on that, please? There was some general comments in the chat that people might be interested in looking at, but I've got no specific questions, so I'll move on. We can always come back to a question if someone is struggling with the technology. So just pausing again. Okay, let's move on. So Aurora, I saw Aurora there earlier. Thank you, Sarah. Aurora, you're on next. So update on the Weka Mayor, please.
Right, okay. Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, can you introduce yourself as well, please, Aurora?
Sorry, yes. I thought I was well known, sorry, but yeah,
well, you might be.
You're right. So my name is Aurora Loy. I'm the Electoral Services Manager for Bath and North East Somerset Council. We organise elections and we also deal with electoral registration. In February, the government announced that the election scheduled for the 6th of May would take place. So for us in Bath and North East Somerset, that means that we're going to have the Police and Crime Commissioner elections, which were postponed last year. The Chief Executive for Bath and North East Somerset Council is actually the police area returning officer for the whole of the Avon and Somerset police area. Which means we will coordinate the election across the 8 local authorities which form part of the Avon and Somerset Police. We deal with the nomination papers, and we also have got this sort of coordinating role across the area. In addition to the Police and Crime Commissioner elections, we've got the West of England Combined Authority elections. So that's to elect the mayor, the West of England mayor. We've got some small, smaller context. We've got a neighbour planning referendum in the parish of Stanton Drew, and a referendum on the community right to build order for Freshford and Limpley Stoke. And for that one, we will work together with Wiltshire because we share boundaries with that local authority for that particular neighbourhood area. We published the notice of election on this Monday, on the Monday just gone, the 22nd of March. The notice of election actually triggers the election itself, and it's when the nomination period starts. Polling day will be will happen on Thursday, 6th of May, and polling hours will be the usual 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at at night. In terms of the voting process, nothing has changed. So the procedure is exactly the same as we know it. What has changed is actually the additional measures we've got in place to make sure that everybody who attends the polling station or everybody who attends any of the events in connection with the election is safe. And that is members of the public as voters, candidates and agents, and also the returning officers staff. In some, well, following government guidance, we're not using schools. So we went from using 11 schools at previous elections to just one school, and that particular school, which is in Bath, will not close. So we'll be able to have the polling station open and kept separate from children's lessons. So we're not going to disrupt their education. The schools which we normally used in Keynsham, that was Shandock School, and the schools in Midsummer Norton, Long Vernal School and Norton Hill School will not be used. So we have found alternative venues. So that's sort of, there will be changes in terms of location of polling stations in some areas, because we're trying to make sure that the children can carry on with their education. We also have we will have additional measures in place at every polling station. We're working together with public health, environmental health, emergency planning, health and safety, to make sure that all our processes are run in a way which minimizes the risk of the spread of the virus. We sent out poll cards to all electors in Bath and North East Somerset. For those electors who were due to go to the polling station to vote, we have included a leaflet, and that leaflet explains, has got a summary of the additional measures they will find at polling stations. So we will stress the fact that hand hygiene is important. So electors will need to sanitize their hands when they arrive at the polling station and when they leave the polling station. There will be a requirement to wear a face covering unless the voter is exempt. And we'll also remind people about the social distancing measures. There will be additional roles at each polling station. So in addition to the presiding officer and the poll clerk, there will be what we call a polling station marshal. The polling station marshal will control the number of electors in the polling station at any one time. So we will not allow everybody in as we did in the past. The numbers will be controlled. So in some polling station, that is likely to be one elector at any one time. Inside the polling station, there will be a polling station safety officer. So after each elector has voted, the surfaces, the touch points will be sanitized. So there will be an officer who will disinfect the polling booth. They will disinfect the ballot box before the next elector is allowed in. On our leaflet, we're also encouraging electors to bring their own pen. We normally supply pencils that are normally attached to the polling booth. So we're encouraging people to come with their own pen, because then it's sort of, again, it's we minimize the risk. Although we will have a supply of pencils. They will be almost, well, not single use, but basically we will supply a clean pencil. Once an elector has used it, it will go into receptacle and it will be sanitized before it's handed to the next elector. But we will have supplies, let's say, of about 150 pencils in each polling station, and after they've been used, then they will not be given to any other elector until they are sanitized. On the leaflet, we're also on the leaflet which accompanies poll cards. We're also making people aware of the alternative ways of voting. So we explain that they can apply to vote by post, which means the ballot paper can be sent to their home address. There are return envelopes with the postal pack, so they don't need to queue, and they are prepaid. So to return the postal pack, they don't need to go to a post office and have any contacts in that context. We also advise them that the proxy voting appointing somebody else to vote on their behalf at the polling station is also an option. A change in legislation in relation to proxy voting will allow, the legislation hasn't gone through, but it will go through in April, will allow appointing emergency proxies in case somebody will need to self-isolate after the deadline to apply for ordinary proxies. We've got a public engagement strategy in place, so there will be different messages, different press releases at different stages in the lead up to the election. There will be social media posts. The messages really change according to where we are with the process. At the moment, we're encouraging people to register to vote. The deadline to register to vote is the 19th of April. We're encouraging people to consider voting by post, and we're reminding them that the deadline for that is the 20th of April. As we move towards polling day, then the messages will change in terms of reminding people where the polling station is, reminding people of the measures in place at the polling station, and so on. The count, so the polling day is, as I said, on Thursday, the 6th of May. We will verify the ballot boxes on that night. The verification and the counts will happen at the sports training village at the University of Bath, where we'll be able to, well, it's quite a large space, so we'll be able to be socially distanced and run events which are quite major events, keeping those security measures in place. So on Thursday night, we just open the ballot boxes and count how many ballot papers we've got inside each ballot box, but the count themselves will happen for the Police and Crime Commission election on the Friday, and we start at 11 o'clock in the morning. We anticipate to announce the results between 5 and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. For that election, again, I repeat, we have got that coordinating role. So before we announce that the count is in might be in two stages. We use the supplementary voting system, which is where electors have got, they can express two preferences on the ballot paper. So it's quite a complex ballot paper to count. All local authorities within the area need to reach stage 1 of the count, come up with the results before we can actually move to stage 2 of the count if there are no candidates with 50% of the votes at the end of stage 1. The count for the West of England Combined Authority mayoral election will be on Saturday, the 8th of May, again at the Sports Training Village. We start at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we anticipate to finish around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And then on the Sunday, the 9th of May, we will count the ballot papers for the referendums, the Stanton Drew referendum first, and then the referendum on the community right to build order later on in the morning. We haven't sent any correspondence yet to parish clerks about that, about the voting the counting arrangements for the neighbourhood planning referendum and for the community right to build order, and we'll do that within the next 2 weeks. I think that's all I had to say, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Aurora. I think that was quite substantial feedback there to everyone. Any questions from anyone? I can't see anything on the chat, but I'll leave. I suppose while I'm waiting for questions to come in, I just wanted to emphasise or just to ask again about the postal vote take-up. Have you actually seen an increase in people looking for more postal votes? So I think that will keep everyone more distanced and more safe. Is that
definitely
happening?
Yeah, definitely. So since poll cards have gone out, I think we've gone up by 700 postal votes. That is in the space of five days. So there's been a significant increase, which is what we were expecting. Actually, it's a slightly different subject, but it's something that I actually meant to mention at the end of my are some vacancies resulting from councillors having resigned. So for those vacancies, we have published the notice of vacancy. In terms of what happens if an election is requested. If an election is requested before the 29th of March, the election will take place on the 6th of May. So we can combine that election with the 6th of May if there is a request for that election. If the request to the 29th of March, then the election will not take place on the 6th of May, and that's because of the legal timetable. It will happen within 60 days, that's 60 days of the date that the notice of vacancy was published, but we will not be able to hold it in combination with the other elections. So I don't know if if any parishes are in, think there might be a request for an election for those vacancies currently being advertised. But this is certainly something to keep in mind. If the election is requested before the 29th of March, then yes, we will combine it with a pause on the 6th of May, but the nomination period will be quite short because the deadline for nominations will be the same as for the other elections, and it's the 4 o'clock on Thursday, the 8th of April. So that is, as I said, something to keep in mind.
Thank you for that, Aurora. So yeah, so that was the message there. Any requests for parish vacancies, any elections needed for parish vacancies, if you can get your requests in by the 29th, that would be good, because that will all happen on the same day. But I'll just leave it. I've got a question coming in from Councillor Jackson. Eleanor, are you there?
Well, it's a question and a comment.
Go on.
First of all, could I thank Aurora very much indeed for the way she handled a census inquiry from one of my residents. The resident rang me up to tell me how kind you were, how she did now understand that you weren't involved with the census. But anyway, she was very grateful for the advice, and she's actually had 4 paper forms sent.
Right, okay.
So thank you very much for handling. I think there were a number of other residents in other parishes who got in touch with you about the census not being the difficulty that there's been in getting a paper copy of the census. And thank you for your helpful email about the situation where particularly people like her or a long walk from a post box, to get them back, that people won't be chased immediately. So thank you. That's a comment. The second one is, I have to vote in the Bath Studio School. Are measures going to be taken to keep the pupils separate from the voters? Because rightly, you don't want the students to be disturbed in their classes. But I'm sure my residents don't want to catch anything from the students either.
Sorry, which polling station is this?
This is Victoria Hall, Radstock, which houses the ballet school.
Right. Okay. Now, what is going to happen? Each polling station will have a risk assessment. So our the public health team will send out inspection officers. So that will take place between next week up until the mid-April. So as part of the risk assessment, they will identify we have already prepared a risk assessment, which is generic, a risk assessment for COVID. So that we identified all the risks which will be common to every polling station, and then the aim of these individual risk assessment, which will be done with a site visit from the officers, will identify anything else which is specific to every polling station. I will certainly take a note about the Victoria Hall, but the officers will have the chance to discuss this with they will meet the booking contact or the key holder, and they will discuss anything else which might pose a risk on polling day, which is specific to that polling station.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you very much, Aurora. So yes, so I think the other message to parishes also is about the relocating of the polling stations. Local parish councillors might get a request or inquiries as to where the polling stations move. So just please be aware of that in your local areas, because I'm sure we'll all get those queries if one of them has moved. Okay, so I've got no other formal questions, so I'd like to move on. Thank Aurora. Thank you for your time. You can always stay and listen to the rest of the debate. You're very welcome, but understand if you have to go. So next item on the agenda. Thank you, Aurora. So next item, Dawn, are you ready on next item on the agenda, please?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Excuse me if I read from my notes. There's quite a few little bits to cover, so I don't want to miss anything. At last Baines Alcombe meeting on the 3rd of February, members raised several issues of concern that officers from the local authority have now been able to respond to as follows. In respect of Fix My Street, it was reported that the messaging was not always correct. For example, the platform reporting that work had been signed off as being complete without the work actually being checked that it was complete. This seemed to relate mainly to highways works. Jonathan Cordier of Baines IT team was contacted, and he's confirmed that the responses are the responsibility of and dependent on various teams updating their own systems. Any street work feedbacks is linked to highways, and the Fix My Street technical team can look into issues such as auto-generation of spurious status updates. It was suggested that parishes notify either Council Connect or the community engagement team if they find messaging on individual reports that is not correct, so that the relevant team can be contacted. Parishes are also encouraged to contact the Baines Community Engagement Team or Council Connect with day-to-day issues, as they usually resolve or highlight them to the relevant teams fairly rapidly, rather than waiting for a parish liaison meeting to come around. So because the meetings are quite far apart, it's better just to go to the community engagement team and get your issue resolved quicker. Diversion routes associated with road closure was another concern raised. Whilst parishes welcomed the shorter diversion planned, it had been noted that on the road closure notices being distributed by Baines, that road names has also been shortened. For example, Bristol Road Baines and Bath Road Baines, without identifying the community. As several roads have the same names, the community also needs to be included, such as Bath Road Keynsham or Bath Road Salford. In respect of this, Paul Garrod from the traffic management team was contacted. He was unaware that this was occurring and will ask the team to make sure the community's name is included in road closure notices going forward. In the meantime, if parishes notice any errors or omissions in future, they should advise Council Connect or the community engagement team. The issue of the post office closure in Peasetown St John was raised, and Baines officers were asked if there was anything that Baines Council could do to save this facility. The response from Baines Council is that unfortunately, as this is a private business, the council's influence is limited. Details of the post office's consultation on this closure was passed to the Peasetown St John's Parish Council, suggesting they feedback and promote the consultation to their local residents. Incorrect information in respect to street lighting numbering on Parish Online system was identified and highlighted by Peasetown St John's Parish Council. Baines Council responded to this problem by supplying the contact details for the GIS team to this Parish Council so that their parish clerk could follow this up with them. And Stephen Burrell of Highways Electrical has also been advised and said any similar issues in the district can be reported via the street lighting inbox with examples, and they will liaise with the GIS team. There have been a few issues in respect of street lighting, which is a hot topic at our ALCOG meetings, especially for those parish councils that are seeking new contracts. One particular issue that was raised by Peasetown St John Parish Council was that they'd experienced problems with their LED streetlights. It appears that some were from a faulty batch, which had resulted in a higher failure rate than usual. This parish wanted to know whether Baines had experienced similar issues with their LED streetlights. And Stephen Burrell from Highways Electrical was contacted in respect of this matter, and he confirmed that Baines has also had some issues with faulty photo cells, causing streetlights to come on in the day. He's reported that he has a contact at Signify, formerly Philips Lighting, and is happy to assist parishes in making contact with them and explaining any technical aspects. We have a full update on street lighting contracts, etc., by Jeff Davis of South Stoke Parish Council, and that will follow on from my report. Other matters discussed at our Baines Alka meeting included a report from a representative on the Joint Local Access Forum, wherein she highlighted that requests has been made for evidence from people that have used and walked over in the past 20 years the section of the Cotswold Way that passes across the recreation ground at Weston Village. The evidence is needed to show that the footpath has been used historically by many people, and it is hoped that this evidence will ensure the footpath stays open and is accessible for all in the future. Unfortunately, lockdown and the pandemic has seen a problem for many of our parishes, with people driving to rural locations and villages to undertake a walk, which in turn has resulted in bad parking. Salford Parish Council has been particularly affected by this, and their clerk reported this to their local PCSOs. And they put up in their riverside areas signage stating, "Do you need to be here?" And they also attended and undertook some regular patrols to remind walkers of the guidance rules. So if your parish is suffering from this problem, it may be worth contacting your local beat officer or the PCSOs for assistance. I've also got an update on several matters from our regional officer for Alka, and can report that there is no news in respect to the virtual meetings after the 7th of May. And the regional committee and NOUT are still advising that both annual assemblies and annual meeting of the parish council are held before the 7th of May virtually. Alka have reported that there have been a huge increase in the take-up of finance training for clerks, which is really good, and also in good counsellor training, now that it's on Zoom, which is positive. And they're going to continue to holding more training courses online. A question has arisen from NOUT and Alka, and they'd be grateful for a response as to whether Baines Council would be recommending the adoption of the new LGA Code of Conduct. NOUT and Alka would like councils to move towards a standardised code across the all local authorities. Also, NOUT are working with the Society of Local Council Clerks on a new civility project to tackle bullying in the sector. That's bullying of clerks and clerks who are bullies. Finally, it was great to hear several of our parishes' thoughts and actions in respect of climate emergency matters, and there is a keen desire to share ideas and set up links between like-minded parishes. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, Dawn. There was a lot there, but thank you very much. There's a lot of detail there. Council Connect, Peasdown Post Office. I think there was some feedback in the chat about contact details. Street lighting was there as well. One thing that sort of sparked my ears was countryside parking. And I just wanted to sort of probably extend that to sort of the country code, closing gates behind you, that sort of thing. I don't know whether Baines has sort of put out any press release to remind people when they are on the country walk to sort of adhere to those codes and be considerate of parking people's driveways and whatever. I don't know whether Dave Dixon, did I see Dave Dixon there earlier? Don't know whether Dave is the right person to ask.
Probably not, Chair, but I will find out for you and I'll let you know, and we'll pass that information on with the minutes.
Andrew, I'm just looking, it probably comes under public rights of way, which sits with Neil and myself in Transport and Highways. So we could look into this matter for you.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I think what it is just a reminder to people to be considerate. I think there's a lot of people going out into, thank you, Dave. There's a lot of people going out into the countryside who may not normally go out into the countryside, and they don't necessarily know the sort of code of conduct, closing gates behind you and that sort of thing, and dogs on leads, and I think just for most people in the countryside, it's common sense, but for city folk, it's not always common sense. There we are.
I'll pass that through.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just add to that, a huge issue is also the amount of dog waste in bags that are dropped on the ground and hung on gates and put in trees, etc. which is a killer for livestock if they get hold of one of those. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a very fair point, actually, Dawn. I when you see it, you think, why do people think that somebody magically is going to come along and take away their dog waste? I don't know, but there we are. So yes, thank you for that. Thank you for that input there, Joe. And the LGA Code of Conduct. Does anyone have any further? I can't remember it being discussed in my meeting. I don't know if any cabinet member knows anything about this new LGA Code of Conduct, or have I missed something? I'm looking at Rob. I'm looking at Tim.
Andy, we're looking for that.
Sorry, Duncan.
Chair, it's on the agenda for the next meeting of the Standards Committee.
Oh, excellent. Thank you for that, Duncan. Okay, so yeah, excellent. So I think that answers the question, and to some extent there, Dawn. Yes, it's on the radar. Okay, I've got some. Will wanted to speak. A message from.
That's all right. Don't worry. Duncan covered it, so that's fine. I was just going to say we're looking to the Code of Conduct, so that's absolutely fine.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you. Okay, lovely. I think. Thank you for that, Dawn. I've got no other people requesting to speak, so I'd like to move on. Right,
Andy, I had my hand up.
Sorry, Paul. I was looking at the chat. Sorry, Paul. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I'd just like to, as someone who does a lot of walking, I would just like to re-emphasize what Dawn raised. There's just been this growing habit of people picking up after their dog, putting it in a bag, and then either hanging it up or throwing it in the verge, and it just beggars belief. So I think that is something that needs to be really added to the countryside code. It's no good just putting it into a plastic bag. You've got to take it home with you. So that is a real growing menace, because plastic, of course, as we know, lasts for 1,000 years.
Yeah. Absolutely, and yeah, I every time I see it like that, I just, it beggars belief. It really does. But there we are. Pam Carver, please. Pam, are you there?
On the same theme, I mean, not only those dog bags, but also litter in general. I mean, I'm in East Hartbury and surrounding areas, and we were absolutely inundated with additional people last summer, and it's beginning to happen now, and the amount of litter that is just being dropped, just general litter of all sorts, is just extraordinary. And I don't know if there's any way that we can do something to try and counteract that.
Yeah, a fair point, Pam. I think it's something that Paul, I don't know whether there's anything that somebody's been mentioning as a dog waste leaflet. I think we just needs to be re-emphasised, all these things about litter, dog waste. You know, no matter where you are, you shouldn't be dropping litter. So yeah, but well said, Pam.
Barbecues are a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just taking litter home, being considerate, and just thinking about what you may or may not be leaving behind. I agree. It's a tricky one. Councillor Jackson says not much use when you have a dog family. Okay, right. So there's comments. People are making comments, but I'll move on if I may. Dawn, I think I can see you on screen. Does that address all the issues that you wanted to put, please?
Yes, thank you. That's lovely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dawn. Okay. Next item on the agenda, item 6, which is the WECA Spatial Development Strategy and the Baines Local Plan and Transport Delivery Plan. So I've saved.
Sorry, we've got Jeff.
Sorry.
Parish Council doing his report after mine on.
You have. Sorry, I missed that. Well, see, people are keeping an eye on me. Excellent. Well done. Thank you. Jeff Davis, please.
I'll just introduce myself in the context of this problem. So Jeff Davis, I'm the clerk at Southstoke. Southstoke have 8 street lights, which they're responsible for. And so if you like, we're a typical council in the context of having very few lights, finding ourselves with no lighting maintenance contract and being very unlikely to be able to procure one because nobody's particularly interested in just 8 streetlights. So that's how I came to find myself picking up this particular issue. Across Baines, there are 20 parishes with streetlights, and it ranges from 120 at Beesdown down to just 1 in a couple of the smaller parishes. How we got those streetlights, nobody really knows. We seem to have inherited them, and along with that, we inherited maintenance by SSE. If you like, the issue that's arisen is Baines re-tendered their highways maintenance contracts previously held with SSE, and the contract was awarded to Volker Highways. So SSE have withdrawn from the area. And at that time, they were sort of talking about negotiating new contracts with the parishes. Not that the parishes could ever put their hands on any previous contract, but that was where we were. SSE have withdrawn, and so all of us from the 1st of April 2020 have found ourselves with no street lighting maintenance contracts and no street lighting maintenance, actually. Fortunately, the Baines highways officers came to our rescue and liaised with Volker Highways, and between us we've been talking and organising something in its place. And so Volker have provided us with rates for reactive maintenance and for planned maintenance, and a good number of parishes have actually raised purchase orders and got repairs done under the reactive maintenance. I don't know how many have issued purchase orders on Volker for planned maintenance. I certainly have, and Volker have accepted those. So we've got all of that in place, but it's not under any sort of formal agreement or arrangement. That said, under SSE, we thought we had a supplier who was actually doing the management of the lights for us. Whereas under this arrangement, Volker, which is what Volker provides to the other district councils where they find parishes with streetlights, this is the arrangement that they do. The parishes simply manage their own streetlights and raise purchase orders for whatever they want done. I can manage that, and the larger parishes with larger streetlights, I think, are managing that. But I am aware that there are at least a couple of parishes who are struggling with that, simply because they lack the experience and the knowledge about their lights to actually do it. It's quite a significant problem. I mean, we are talking about 360 streetlights in total, so it would be pretty bad if all of those eventually went off through lack of maintenance, and parishes are actually obliged legally to maintain them or turn them off. But you know, we find ourselves in a position where we have got maintenance that Volker are providing on the production of purchase orders, and that's being communicated to those parishes, and we are using that. But going forward, I think we need a better framework or some contract or set of contracts that, if you like, represent that, and so that parishes can actually show that they've got street lighting maintenance. The difficulty there is that it's extremely difficult for Volker and the parishes to come to those arrangements, because it would be 20 separate agreements. And I think that's sort of where I want to conclude, really, that what we need now is some help from Baines Council to help us put together some sort of overarching framework or contract, so to sort of tie us into the Baines contract in some way, so that parishes have got a clear framework in which they can procure their street lighting maintenance. I mean, it's been really quite difficult, as you might imagine, in the past year to actually sort of get all of this negotiated and put in place. And so I don't imagine it's going to be particularly easy to try and get this last bit of the jigsaw put in place either. But you know, that's where we are now, and I think that's the only way we're going to move forward from where we are into something that's substantive and formal and is a basis for moving forward, and would have the potential then of ensuring that we didn't find ourselves in this position again when Baines Council next re-tender for services in about 5 or 6 years' time.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
I did put a report on there, so most of what I've just said is in rather more detail available on your website.
Lovely, thank you for that. That's very informative. Thank you. So I've got a list of speakers. So I've got Neil Butters, Gary Peacock, I presume is there that I can call on, and I've got Vic Pritchard. So Councillor Butters, please, do you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Chair. There are 4 things I wanted to mention briefly. Thanks, Jeff, by the way, for that very encouraging and useful, wide-ranging report, and feel free to raise with me later if it suits. Railways, the Restore Your Railway Ideas Fund that people may have heard about has been seeking nominations. There have been a number in our region, and in particular for the restoration of Salford Station and the Radstock to Frome railway line. So just to make people aware that we are formally endorsing both of those bids, and we hope for some good news in June or so.
Sorry, Neil, sorry, we're just talking about street lighting for the minute. I'll bring you in. I thought you wanted to talk about street lighting. Is it street lighting?
No, only the bit that I said just then.
No, okay. No, I'll come back to you. Neil. So, Councillor Pritchard, you wanted to speak, and I'll bring Gary in then.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. The paper identifies 20 parishes with street lights that the responsibility for the maintenance is to the respective parishes. It doesn't mention Stowe Sutton. Now, Bishop Sutton has lighting that was introduced on a Barrett estate known as Summer Lees. This is one of the estates that were one when we never had a core strategy. And the lights were introduced against the will of the parish. And the officers concerned at the time were insistent on putting them in and said it would complement the street lighting of the village, where there is absolutely no street lighting, and it's contrary to the neighbourhood plan and dark skies. So am I to take it that the lights on that estate, because it's not mentioned in this report, are the responsibility of Bath North East Somerset Council?
Okay, good question, Vic. I'll ask Gary Peacock. Is Gary there? Or
yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor First, I'm here. Yes.
Yeah, Gary. So a couple of points there. One, obviously, particularly South Stoke. The other one, the sort of the composite street lighting maintenance framework, and then Councillor Pritchard's question about Nether Stowe. Yeah, somewhere like that.
Yeah, so thank you. I thought the summary was very helpful on the South Stoke, and it gave a good overview. Again, in fairness, I think the first I've come across this is reading the report today. I mean, we'll take it away and look at it, but I did note, and I've spoken to the street lighting manager, and happy to work with the parishes to identify if there's a way forward in terms of using the Volcker framework, which can assist. And again, that would probably need conversations with our procurement team as well in terms of contracts, but happy to have those conversations and take those forward. Sorry, Councillor, first, I think you're on mute again.
Right. And Vic Pritchard's question about, was it Bishop Sutton or Nether Stowey? I can't remember now. One of those two.
Bishop Sutton, don't be so dismissive.
Over the hill over there somewhere.
Yes, well, in Bishop Sutton, if the streetlights were put in as part of a new development, which forms part of the public highway, that would come under the management of the council's street lighting assets. Yeah.
You're on mute, Andrew.
Sorry, thank you. Joe or Neil, did you just want to add to that about street lighting?
Sure, we're really aware that it's part of our portfolio, so we'll certainly pick this up and see how we can look at the detail of this. And again, you know, we need to look in the detail.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes,
thank you very much.
as I said before, you know, Jeff and I know each other well, and we'll work together on this.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so I want to move on to the item 6 on the agenda now. Jeff, is that okay? I'm looking at you, Jeff. Is that okay? Yeah, you're on mute.
Yes, that's fine. Can I assume that I can contact Gary Peacock directly on this and follow it up with him?
Yes, please. And keep Neil, if you know Neil,
Yes.
Councillor Butters,
Yes.
keep Neil.
He's
on
our
top
ward
of it.
councillor. So,
Yes. Yeah, okay. Good on you. Thank you. Okay, I'll move on. Thank you, everyone, for that.
You're on mute.
Spatial development strategy and the local plan and transport delivery plan. So we do the spatial development strategy first. So I'll bring Councillor Ball in to introduce and then hand over to, is it Simon? Is there Simon De Beer?
Yes.
Okay, Tim. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, it's very late now, so I'm going to say very little. We are running 3 local plans in the space of 3 or 4 years at the moment. The local plan refresh, the West of England spatial strategy, and also the full local plan. All the 5 officers working very hard on these plans at the moment. We have patience by parish council people regarding our inability to get out into communities and consult as we normally would. Rather than me speak a long time, because we're a heavy item coming up, I will hand over to Simon De Beer now.
Thank you, Tim. Simon.
Thank you, Andy. Is it okay if I do the SDS and the local plan items together? We were anticipating doing, and Gary also doing the transport item, and running those 3 together and then opening it up for any questions, because we've got a very few slides, they're very short presentation. We don't want to spend a long time talking to you.
Yes, please. And then I'll bring Joe and Neil in on the transport as the transport cabinet members afterwards. Okay, so we can crack on.
Okay, so we've got a few slides. So we've been asked to do a short update on those 3 items. If you can move on, please. Is it Sarah or Alison? So the JSP has been withdrawn, as you know. You were familiar with the joint spatial plan. That's been withdrawn. WECA are required now to do a spatial development strategy, which is a plan covering the 3 WECA authorities. So it's different to the old JSP. North Somerset are doing their own local plan. And the SDS, the Spatial Development Strategy, will provide the basis for the new Baines local plan. So we can't continue with updating our existing plan in full until we've got the Spatial Development Strategy. But as soon as, so in the meantime, we're doing an update. I'll come back to that in a minute. We're doing an update to our existing local plan. Next slide, please. So the SDS is going to be a high-level plan, much higher level than the JSP was. It's going to cover things like a strategic approach. It will provide the housing. Sorry, I can hear some background noise. So is that? Shall I carry on? No. It will provide the overall housing for the WECA area and for each local authority. So we have a revised new housing target to replace the core strategy figure for Baines through the SDS once adopted in a couple of years' time. This will also provide the affordable housing figure. It'll also give us a high-level approach to employment, which is very difficult in light of the uncertainties at the moment, but some jobs and space requirements for each authority. And then it'll give a spatial strategy. So unlike the JSP, it won't identify sites. It will identify broad locations where, to accommodate the aspirations, the climate emergency aspirations and the housing requirements of the SDS, it'll be a broad indication of where growth should take place. It'll be down then to UA local plans to decide which sites are needed to deliver the housing requirement and employment requirement. And to ensure it's balanced, the SDS will also have important policies around, as I said, environment, placemaking, energy, the climate emergency. So it won't just be about numbers and figures, as often becomes the impression, but it will be an all-rounded plan. Next slide, please. In terms of timetable, if you just work your way through the slide. So we have just finished an engagement. So if you could just press the buttons to complete the slide, because the slide was set up to open in stages. So if you carry on just working through this, right? So, but the informal engagement which has taken place, there's a report public, I'll show you in a minute, of that engagement. We're now preparing the SDS, and they're due to go to the draft plan is scheduled towards the end of this year. So there'll be a formal consultation on the draft plan, which will then be submitted for examination. Public hearings will take place towards the end of next year with inspector's report and adoption. And alongside that, then Baines is doing its new local plan, but it can only really start the new local plan once the SDS has reached quite an advanced stage, and we can't adopt our plan until we know what's coming out of the SDS. So in the meantime, as I said earlier, we're preparing a partial update to our own local plan to make sure that we're covered and that we have an up-to-date policy framework to reflect our own priorities and obligations in the short term. Next slide, please. Just be aware of the evidence that's going to be sitting behind the SDS. It'll be also relevant to our own Baines local plans, and you might need to use some of this, or be aware of some of this for your own neighbourhood planning work if you're doing a new neighbourhood plan or updating a neighbourhood plan. So it's the local housing needs assessment, which is the government requirement for assessing the new housing calculation. There's an economic land study. There's a transport appraisal framework to make sure we're looking at transport differently this time. Unlike the old approach, which is very car-based and congestion-based, it's looking at how transport measures can come in place to support new growth and new development in a way which supports the climate emergency. And that'll be accompanied by a carbon modelling tool, so we can assess the carbon impact of different growth scenarios. There'll be the strategic housing land availability assessment, which is currently published. It'll be updated, and I'll show you a map of that shortly. There's also studies around renewable energy and ecology in light of all the authorities' concerns about climate and the ecological emergencies. There's the engagement report, which reflects the engagement taken by WEC at the end of last year. Viability work, and also we'll need to be doing a strategic green belt assessment. Just looking at the green belt, reviewing how the green belt performs, and that's something which is standard part of any plan making, just to make sure we've understood the green belt. Next slide, please. And these figures are the figures coming out of the government's new standard methodology for calculating housing need. So these are in the public domain. You may have seen these before. And what this figure shows is the annual rate of housing expectation for each authority, and that this comes into place now as a housing requirement, but also then a 20-year figure, which would be the basis for plan making. The difference this time round is that the plan making housing requirement would be the combined figure for the whole of the west of England, the 105,000 houses. So we don't have an individual housing requirement for the purposes of plan making, but we do have that figure relevant to our own 5-year housing land supply issues. The figure is much higher than it was for the JSP, because the figure of 105 was the same housing requirement that was for the whole of the JSP, i.e. all 4 authorities. That 105,000 figure applies just to Bristol, South Gloucestershire and Baines, and it's so high because the calculation focuses particularly on an uplift in Bristol, and so Bristol's housing requirement really has got a lot higher than it ever has been before. So that's the starting point of the assessment of housing need. The actual housing requirement itself will be an output of the plan. So we need to look at what sites are available, what growth rates are available, what infrastructure is necessary to bring that forward, and that'll be probably a different figure. It may be lower, it's likely to be higher, but it may be lower depending on what WECA feels is an appropriate growth figure for the West of England. Next slide, please. And I mentioned to you the SDS engagement, which was taken at the end of last year. A report's been published. If you want to look at it, you may have seen it already. Just an extract here to show the kind of things which came through as people consider to be important. So things like access to homes and provision of homes, but also very highly things like low carbon issues and nature and open space. So all those things came across as key issues to be taken into account that we need to consider in plan making. And the last slide on the SDS is just the SLA slide. So if you show the next slide, please. And this is a map which is already published for your information. These are all the locations across the West, across Baines, where landowners and developers have shown an interest in developing sites. So these have no weight at all in terms of the planning system or plan making, but there are sites which developers have indicated interest in, and they will be looked at and assessed alongside any other sites which are considered to be suitable or appropriate in terms of seeking to accommodate growth requirements, both housing and employment. And in Baines, when we took this exercise, we also did a call for sites for sustainable development, i.e. wind energy proposals. So we were a little bit more extensive in Baines in terms of what we asked people to provide information on. If I then quickly jump to the local plan partial update, which is the next slide, and there's only a few slides on this. So as I said before, because the SDS is going to take a while to get in place, and we feel that our policies are more than 5 years old in Baines and they need updating, we are doing a limited partial update covering a few key policies. So it's things like the climate and ecological emergency, transport issues, the housing supply we do need to address because we were committed to do that at the last examination. We know that the housing supply is not sufficient for the full plan period, but we were allowed dispensation to adopt the plan provided we did this review and looked at additional sources of supply. There's other issues around university, HMOs and student accommodation, which we need to update. The green recovery, which is a key issue, obviously, for the council post-pandemic. And there's a few other minor issues like greenbelt villages and HDBs, which we need to also need to look at in light of recent legal cases. The next slide, please. So Baines, we undertook on the local plan partial update, we undertook options and scope and draft proposals earlier this year, which came to an end in February. And there you can see, we will publish all the comments we received in due course, but you can see the kind of issues there which gained a lot of interest. So things like particularly the recreation ground and Bath, which was, we were just assessing the need to review that policy. But then things like the climate emergency and housing supply and HMOs, all of the, you can see which was of greatest interest. But just as a reminder, it's not so much the volume of comments which counts when it gets to examination and plan making, it's the nature of what people have said and the evidence they've used and how they've and the reasoning. So really it's the quality of the comment more than the number of comments, which really counts, especially when you get to an examination. Next slide, please, sir. We are going to be holding a few additional events with parishes. We are due to take the draft local plan partial update to council in May, June. But before we do that, we are arranging some particular sessions with parishes to cover some key issues. We're proposing a meeting with you in April and one in May, and particularly to look at the housing supply issues and looking at potential site allocations if any new ones are needed beyond what was in the update document. So we were focusing initially on brownfield sites and Bath, which had come forward, and possibly some of the greenfield land was really released from the Greenbelt previously for long-term development. But we'll have a conversation with you about what the consultation shows, what the updated housing figures show, and our most recent review of the housing supply. We're also looking to update the parking standards. I know this is an issue for a lot of parishes, so we'll give you more opportunity to engage in that process in the April meeting. And then renewable energy policies, we've got quite ambitious targets to meet renewable energy in terms of our 2030 zero carbon ambitions. And so we will need to look at ways we can generate additional renewable energy, whilst at the same time understanding the need to take care and be sensitive to our much valued local landscapes. And there's a particular issue, a bit of a detailed issue around infill at in greenbelt villages, and you will have seen the detail in the options document. And again, we can go in a bit more detail with you about what this means the kind of changes and are thinking on what the probably option is to pursue for the local plan. Next slide, please. And so we're now preparing the draft local plan for agreement by council in May, June for subsequent consultation. So you will have an opportunity, as well as the informal engagement over the next couple of months, to comment formally. And it's important that you do comment on that plan if you want to have a voice at the examination. So the forthcoming examination by the end of the year will be an examination into the issues arising on that. So please make sure that you do comment. I've spoken about engaging with the parishes and your chance to comment. If you can jump to the next slide, please. And I think this is the last slide. So again, in terms of the timetable, we had the options consultation at the beginning of the year. We then got the draft plan coming through in the spring, submission for examination towards the end of the year, the hearings at the end of the year before we get the inspector's report, and then we can adopt the plan. So that's quite a quick process for a local plan. I know planning takes a long time, but for a local plan, it's quite a quick process. We are trying to keep the scope quite focused on the very key issues that need to update and avoid dragging in issues which perhaps would extend the process. So that's the local plan, a partial update, and the SDS. I think it's over to Gary now to talk about the transport delivery plan.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, please. Thank you, Simone.
Thank you, Simone. Alison, is it possible to run the presentation? And as I say, it's probably about 4 or 5 slides, so I'll try and keep this as brief as possible.
Thanks. And then I'll bring in Councillor Butters and Councillor Wright just to add anything after you, Gary. Yeah. And then I've got a couple of questions on the table for everyone that they put in the chat. So I'm sort of lining you up. Thank you.
Bear with us, Gary. We're just about to find your PowerPoint, so we're just going to bring it up onto the screen now.
Can't hear.
No, I think they're just loading the PowerPoint from what I've been told.
Okay, here we come. Here he is. Okay, over to you, Gary.
Thank you. So just really wanted to touch on the transport delivery plans that we're working on. And also, I think I had a request to identify how we manage requests for highway schemes from the initial request to how they're actually added onto the capital programme. So I'll just summarise that briefly. Next, please, Alison. So we work in partnership with West of England Combined Authority very closely, actually, because they are now the local, the Transport Authority. They are again responsible for buses, just to clarify that point. And interestingly, on the 15th of March, just gone, the government has actually released the National Bus Strategy for England, and it's actually named Bus Back Better. So you may hear that terminology again, and there's the link there. I think whilst it's very fresh, the strategy, and we still need to review it, I think it can be seen in a very positive light. What it actually does, the government are very supportive of bus services, and they're looking to try to get the patronage back to pre-COVID levels and expand it. And they're actually identifying that they see public transport playing a key role in transport plans going forward. So we will be working with our colleagues in WECA over the coming months, because one of the requirements is an improvement plan in terms of buses, and all local transport authorities have to submit the improvement plans by October the 31st, and that enables funding to come forward from government. So on the whole, whilst we still need to understand the strategy and work through it, it is quite positive in terms of public transport. Okay, thank you, Alison. I did mention the WEC, or the West of England Combined Authority, and just like to touch on the transport plans that we work on. Are actually we work alongside our colleagues, and the transport plans are funded from WECA. In order to release funding, we have to go through their assurance framework, and that requires business cases to be submitted. And that's generally in 3 stages. You have a strategic outline business case, an outline business case, and then full business case, and that's when the funding is actually released. And the reason I say that is because you may hear me mention that a few times, and that is the process we have to go through in order to get funding. So we are looking to move some transport plans forward. Is it okay, Alison, to push on? Thank you. So one of our key routes that we are looking at is the A4, and that's linking Bristol, Keynsham and Bath. We're looking at improvement plans which would include bus improvements, walking and cycling, and quite importantly as well, linking the local communities to that key route. Consultants are in the process of being appointed at the moment, and they will be responsible for producing a strategic outline business case, and that should be produced during 2021 with an aim of completing the remaining business cases in 22, so we can start delivery in 2023. Thank you, Alison. We're also looking at or undertaking a feasibility study for the A4, and that's for a direct bus service route from Chippenham direct through into Bath, and also along the route looking at some pocket size parking ride sites, which are quite small sites, but basically allowing them to serve the local community and use as small transport interchanges. That feasibility work is progressing, and we expect the results to be finalised in the next couple of months. Thanks, Alison. And just on the same theme as I said, the A4, we're also looking to undertake improvements to the A367 and the A37, and that's in the form of bus improvements, walking, cycling, and again, I will emphasise linking the local communities into those transport routes. And that does follow the same pattern as the A4, where we are about to appoint consultants to undertake that work. Strategic outline business case will be progressed during 2021, with the remaining business cases in 22, looking to start delivery in 2023. So quite large projects, working with our partners in the west of England. I'll just touch on some of the other projects that we're running as well, please, Alison. You may be aware that we recently undertook the first stage of consultation for the Bath delivery plan. That's closed at the end of January, and we will now be collating those results and moving forward, developing options for journeys into Bath and out of Bath and journeys around Bath. Once we've got those options developed, we will be looking to go forward with consultation in the late summer 2021. Moving down the list, Livable Neighborhoods has been touched on today. And as I say, the proposals for Livable Neighborhoods for Bath and North East Somerset have been submitted and are currently being reviewed. We're also a central government funded project, which is a future transport zones. And that's a trial that's been undertaken through the West of England Combined Authority. And that covers such things as e-scooters is being run as part of that trial. But it will also be ticket technology, where one single ticket would enable a person to catch a train, bus, even hire a taxi. And so it's almost a uniform ticketing systems will be trialed, and also transport interchanges and what they may look like for the future. When we talk about transport interchanges, we're talking about locations where there's multiple transport options, from buses, taxis to e-vehicles and possibly even e-bikes. So we can just carry out multitude journeys from A to B. Moving down, we've also had the local walking. Sorry, Alison, you can just pop back up. That's my fault. Yeah. So we've also completed the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans. Those are primarily for our urban sites, which would be Midsummer Norton, Bath and Keynsham. But we are looking to try to expand those so we can start looking at the rural communities and how we can link the rural communities. And I think the work we've identified with some of those bus improvement measures will give us that opportunity to bring that forward as well. And finally, our electric vehicle charging, we're looking for delivery during this year, 2021, and that will see electric charging points installed in council car parks, and that's in Midsummer Norton, Radstock and Keynsham, plus in Bath itself. Okay, thank you, Alison. think that just rounds up really our transport plans. And I'd just like to really touch on requests for highway schemes. So, just to clarify, we've got 1,200 kilometres of highway in carriageway in Bath and North East Somerset, and interestingly, about 16,000 streetlights. So you can imagine there's quite a high demand for new assets to be brought to the network, and that can range from traffic calming, speed humps, to signal control crossings, zebra crossings. So we do need a process for managing those requests. So the way it's been set out is, requests for the schemes would be looked at by our traffic management team, and they would assess each request, and they would base that on the evidence that's been put forward, their expertise, but also site visit and local knowledge. After assessing those requests, if it's felt that they would actually contribute to traffic safety and improvement to traffic management, they will actually be added to the scheme assessment list. That list is prioritised each year, and the top prioritised schemes are added to the capital programme. The capital programme this year for those type of schemes was £1.4 million. That capital programme then goes forward to full council in February, and it's called the Transport Improvement Programme, and it's actually listed out in the budget report. So that's how schemes get put onto the capital programme. And quite often we would look at schemes, and if they're of a more complex nature, we would take them over or try to deliver over 2 years. Year one would be the feasibility. So that would enable us to identify the right scheme and the actual finalise the cost of the scheme. And then year two, we would confirm budgets to enable us to complete the design and construct it in the second year. So, and as an example of that, if a typical speed reduction measure, which could be a speed cushion, would go through the process I've outlined above, and just give you a feel for that, a typical speed cushion or table would cost about £40,000. So you can see very simple measures, can be quite expensive. Just to conclude, we have produced a guidance explaining the process for above, which we can make available if you wish to see it. That's me finished for the moment. I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Gary. Any question? There's been comments in the chat. Any questions, please ask to speak in the chat. I've got cabinet members first. So I've got Councillor Neil Butters on this subject, please, of spatial development plan and the local transport plan, please. And then I'll ask Joe Wright to add to that if necessary. And then I've got Councillor Dave Wood. So in that order, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was really just going to introduce Gary, who's given a very good expose of a number of the schemes that we're working on. We are very conscious of the problems that beset the smaller rural communities, so please don't think we're not. We're looking at ways to address that. But I was concerned that a lot of the parishes had traffic issues and didn't quite understand the procedure for getting road humps and speed signs, etc., onto the programme, and so you'll be pleased, hopefully, to see that that is being addressed, and we hope to work with parishes all over on those fronts. So thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Councillor Wright, Joe.
Sure, I'd just like to follow up with some few other things that are going on. There's a cycling and walking route taking place around Chew Valley Lake. We're putting in quite a few 20-mile-an-hour zones. There's changes to Keynsham and Midsummer Norton High Street. As Gary's already said, there's the Go Ultra Low, where we're putting in electric rapid charging. We also have the e-scooter trial, where you can now rent a long-term lease of an e-scooter. So at the moment, we have the hop-on, hop-off variety in the centre of Bath, but you can also have the long-term lease outside of the city centre. And then we have the Livable Neighbourhoods, and we still have 2 more deadlines for ward councillors to work to, the beginning of May and the beginning of August. So if you think that there is something is important, from parking through to electric charging through to maybe changes in your area that you think would improve the area to make it more livable, please approach your ward councillor. We have, as I said at the beginning, the public rights of way and street lighting. I see lots of comments about buses, We have to really remember that the last 20 years we've seen a deregulated market, and the Conservative government, I'm not meant to be political here, have recognised that that has not worked, and we're going to have to really work together in partnerships, in better ways, get across the authorities to bring in a new system. And the way that they're doing that is going to be that through WECA, that we're going to have to work as an integrated transport authority to bring that about quite quickly in ways that are going to be quite far-reaching. So it's really important that you would read the new document, Bus Back Better. I really do recommend you read it. It's not that challenging. So think about how that could affect local areas, because we do need to hear those voices. And then I would also add that the other issue that's going to happen, and it does affect the rural areas, is that we are shutting down Cleveland Bridge in the centre of Bath. It particularly affects Bath Avon North, but the mitigation measures will be across the whole authority, and if not larger.
Thank you, Joe. We got to 8 o'clock without anyone mentioning any politics. I'd just like to warn everyone we are in Purda, okay? So just remember that. Thank you. Councillor Wood, please. And I've got some questions. Councillor Wood.
Yes, I was some good stuff here, and I was pleased that it was mentioned a couple of times that the rural areas won't be forgotten about, and drawing particular attention to Chew Valley, I think is quite important. And just to underline particularly that there are more than 1,000 fairly densely packed houses in Temple Cloud and Clutton that are currently cut off from Bath entirely. That could be a relatively easy. Obviously, the subsidy was withdrawn under the previous council administration, but those two villages have now grown, so there could be an opportunity there.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. We'll move on. I don't want to end up with now. The questions I've noticed in the chat, and there's some information that Mandy's got a link for transport improvement schemes, which you can click on. It will take you to the transport improvement spreadsheet. But the questions are: there was a question earlier about carbon monitoring. I think that's probably goes to Simone. And SHLAA sites is from Moira in Bathampton. Can you answer those?
Yes, we can send a link to the published SHLA sites, and we're busy updating that, so we can also send parishes the revised SHLA. As part of the meeting in April I spoke about, we're also discussing those SHLA sites. So if we invited to send an attendee to those meetings. And then on the carbon modelling, WECA are developing their own carbon modelling tool to relate particularly to the development of a spatial plan, which may be used also for wider purposes like assessing transport proposals. But they've done an assessment of what's available out there. They've looked at various carbon modelling tools around the country, and they've decided the most appropriate thing is to develop one which is bespoke and for the purposes of putting a strategic plan. And that'll be published alongside the draft plan towards the end of the year, the tool and how they've used it and how it's influenced spatial strategy.
Thank you, Simone. And one question about the slides and about the map. Will those slides be made available, or will some of that information be made available somewhere on that you presented?
I think Sarah said that we're going to send that presentation to parishes and town councils.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So the questions about details on those slides, etc., will be forwarded to the parishes, and to make sure that, and just to echo what Simone said, make sure that you get your comments in on that. Otherwise, you don't follow the whole process through. Okay, so thank you for that. Marie said she'll include the slides with the minutes, so appreciate that. Thank you. I'd like to. Now it is getting quite late now, so unless there's any further comments or questions on this, I'd like to draw this item to a close. Is that? And there's some items in the chat there. So, question: will the various links provided in the chat and be in the minutes? Will they, Marie? Will they be in the minutes?
I'll see about that. I'm not sure if I can get those, but yeah, if we can do, yes.
Okay, thank you. And a question about the carbon monitoring modelling. I'm sure it's there for anyone to read. It's in the chat if anyone wants to read that. So I'd like to draw that item to a close. I can't see anyone desperate to speak, so I shall draw that item to a close, please. Item 7 on the agenda, future meetings. The next meeting is on the 14th of July, so I hope you can all make it. And so that's the good news. The bad news is you won't have me chairing, or that may be the good news. We've got a new chair by then, so hope it all goes well for you. I might attend just for the interest, but thank you everyone, and I'll close the meeting, please. Thank you.